OBJ to the Cleveland Browns. Truly the stuff of fantasy wet dreams. But I mean, not just dreams. Like this is the type of thing that can make you wet while you're awake.
Oh, I know. If I wore underwear, I'd be changing them constantly throughout the day. But
we're both free balling. Who are we?
Absolutely, but I've had to change my slacks quite a bit this day because my God, Odell Beckham going to the Browns is enormous. I mean, we talk about fantasy wood lasting for 4 hours or longer. It's been permanent. It's tough to be a teacher when you got these type of implications going on. But overall, it's been
seated behind the desk a lot.
Absolutely, yeah. I haven't been. It's been finals week, thanks God, so I don't have to move at all. I can just hide behind my desk and dream about Odell Beckham heaving in passes from Baker Mayfield instead of Eli Manning. Just makes me so fucking happy and horny and excited, and oh my God, there's just the implications are enormous. I mean, you're an Odell hater, so
no, yeah. I told you last podcast I was starting to come around on him. I really did say that. I mean, I said I would take him before Antonio Brown last podcast, which is something you've never even remotely heard me say before.
Never.
This, of course, makes me much more interested in it. But like you said in the intro, there's so many implications around this trade that aren't just him. And I mean, I don't know. We can hit those one by one if you want. But yeah. I mean, the one that jumps out at me the most is Jarvis Landry. The guy pretty much proved to us he's not a number one guy. But I think he would be a great number two guy opposite Beckham. And now all of a sudden, as down as I was on him after last year, I'm very much back in again. How about you?
Oh, yeah. So Jarvis Landry's he's number 3 on my list of implications. But why don't we just start with him? I mean, these are former teammates. They know each other very well from their LSU days. They're best friends. They stay in constant contact. So you got to imagine one that just helps Odell Beckham mentally, which is obviously humongous for him, is the mental side of things, being content where he's at and not whining and bitching and throwing shit on the sideline. Going to Cleveland is going to be the absolute perfect antidote for all those antics. I think it's humongous for that mental side of Beckham and obviously Landry too, being with his best friend. And as you mentioned, Landry is the ideal number 2. He needs somebody clearing out that space for him, and there's no one better than Odell Beckham to create that space. The deep speed, the explosiveness, the ridiculous downfield catches, that's going to draw the defense's attention. And when Landry gets one-on-one catches, when he has space underneath, that's when he's by far at his peak, at his most effective. And this new air raid style offense, you got Todd Monken coming in with 23 years of experience running an air raid offense. They run the 4 crosses, the mesh routes that we talked about with Drew Hollingshead. Drew was very emphatic that any receiver that can do damage in space is unbelievable in this offense because all it is designed to do is get them space, get the ball in their hands, and let them do their thing. There's no one better than Landry in that style of offense. He's going to rack up yardage after the catch. So yes, Landry, humongous winner. I had him down at like the low 70s before Odell came because when he's getting doubled and he's the focal point of the passing game and the defense, and as a consequence of that, he's no good. But when he has that number 1 guy lifting the lid and giving him the space, there's very few that are as dangerous as him. So I think he's right back into that 100 potential catch mode with tons of yardage after the catch and this more explosive attack. I'm thrilled about Landry, but obviously at number 3 on my implications list, there's a lot more to cover.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if Beckham is one of the guys that you're talking about on this list. I mean,
number 1. It's Beckham.
Okay, I didn't know if he counted as an implication. But let's talk about Odell Beckham. I was kind of casting him aside because I assumed that was the main course anyway. Yeah. Odell Beckham Jr. Aside from injuries, which has happened once or twice, I mean, like he's been just an offensive machine. The guy produces like crazy. He's such a large part of the Giants' offense, certainly a large part of their passing offense. It's just an understatement to even bring that up. Eli Manning is just garbage and has been for years, and the guy still produces. Baker Mayfield seems to be a guy that's very much on the up. And giving him a weapon like this, I mean, who knows? Maybe there will be a sophomore slump for Baker. Maybe he won't pan out the way we think. But right now, all signs are pointing in a very encouraging direction.
Yeah.
And plus, I mean, all right. So let's talk about Odell for a second. What do you think? What are your predictions for what's the ceiling for this guy? And what's your floor? Like, barring injury, what do you think we're going to see out of OBJ?
I mean, we can just start kind of with that fantasy stock formula style breakdown that we love to do over here. The talent's indisputable. I think no one's going to argue that he's a top 5 receiver in the game, because of course he is. Some might even say he's the number 1 receiver in the game. I know you wouldn't, but there's a lot of people out there that consider him the most explosive, best young talent at the position. And he's in my top 3. I love the guy. I love what he can do. Just so explosive in his routes and his after the catch. Everything about the guy, just explosive. The one word that comes to mind when you see Beckham. Terror at every single layer of the field. There's not a route the guy can't run to perfection, and the hands are, there's nobody better. The one-handed catches, the acrobatic plays. He makes things happen when he's covered. He makes things happen when the ball's in his hands. The guy is a big play threat waiting to happen. And then you go and swap out, as you mentioned, the horrible Eli Manning, maybe the worst starting quarterback in the NFL right now, for Baker Mayfield, maybe the most exciting young guy in the NFL right now. And this is especially important because Baker Mayfield, even with a pretty shitty overall weapon cabinet last year, ranked number 2 in deep passer rating, especially under Freddie Kitchens when he took over. And meanwhile, Eli Manning ranked all the way down at 17. So that's an enormous jump for a guy.
Surprised. I mean, what do you think Eli Manning would have been without Odell Beckham?
It would have been nothing. It would have been absolutely pathetic.
That completely inflates. I was surprised to hear he was that high, but it completely inflates your numbers like that if you're a quarterback and you have a weapon like that.
And so much of it was after the catch too. Like, it looks better than it is because his average depth of target and whatnot ranked like in the bottom 5.
Yards downfield was like a heave for him.
Right, exactly. It was pathetic. And then you get a guy that's made his money on the deep ball. 11 of his 27 touchdowns came on deep passes. That was the most ratio of deep passing touchdowns in the NFL. Baker is a master at the deep ball, and Odell's the most explosive threat in the league. That's going to be magic and money, especially when you put him, as we mentioned, Todd Monken, the air raid offense. You got 4 verticals, meshes, all this stuff designed to give him space. Nobody's more I mean, Landry's as dangerous as it gets with the ball because he's more like a running back, but Odell can just catch a slant and then rip it past the entire defense like nobody else. There's no one that can catch this guy once he gets going. We haven't really seen that since his rookie year, but Todd Monken's a master at designing that style of play. So we'll see that. We'll see him going deep and vertical. We saw Fitzpatrick and Jameis Winston in this air raid offense, even though those two are pretty shitty, definitely less talents than we have with Baker Mayfield here. Those two led the league in pass yards per attempt. 8.8 for Fitzpatrick, 8.4 for Winston. That was 1 and 2 because Monken just loves the deep ball. So he gets a guy in Mayfield that can throw it better than either of those two by a mile. It's going to be a beautiful marriage of a coaching scheme, of the deep passing talent, and now the ultimate deep threat weapon in Beckham. So there's nothing but upside here. He rises in coaching scheme to a perfect 15 out of 15. He rises in surrounding talent from a paltry, which is where he was lowest because of Eli, from a paltry like 9 surrounding talent to now a 14 with Baker Mayfield. He drops a little bit in usage because there are more weapons here. Freddie Kitchens does like to spread the ball a bit more, so he takes like a 1-point hit in usage because even though he'll be used much better, he probably will see a less volume. I mean, Mike Evans had 140 or so targets last year, did a ton of damage with them, so the efficiency will spike, but the actual sheer volume might take a hit. But overall, it's clearly a win. He goes from an 88 stock score all the way up to a 95 for me right now. The risk is there. You mentioned the health. He's only he's played where is the stat right here? He's missed 21 games across 5 seasons, so he has missed a significant chunk of time in multiple years.
A lot of that was in 1 year, though. I mean, probably half of that was in 1 year.
Exactly. He ended last year missing 4 games. He started his rookie year missing 4 games. A lot of it is, annoyingly, those soft tissue injuries. I hate to see a guy have those recurring soft tissue things because those just tend to never go away. So I am nervous about the health. But, I mean, you look at this stat right here before I go on to other players. There's only 4 players who have 40-plus receiving touchdowns since 2014. We got Antonio Brown, who we're going to talk about momentarily, 59 touchdowns in 76 games. DeAndre Hopkins, I should actually just had you guess and see if you could have got them all because they're obviously monsters. DeAndre Hopkins, 45 and 79. Mike Evans had 40 and 77. And then, of course, Odell Beckham, he had 44. But whereas those guys all were, closer to 80 games, he had 44 touchdowns in 59 games. I mean, that's just an absurd scoring pace. There's no one as explosive as this guy, so obviously he gets the 5 out of 5 upside bonus. I think he's got the highest ceiling of any receiver in fantasy. He's up to number 3 on my wide receiver list. Number 11 enters the first round on my big board after ranking right around 23 or 4 with Eli Manning. I think just everything is such a massive stock up arrow for this guy. I can't wait to see what he does in Cleveland. I'm so excited about it.
Yeah, I'm all in too. I'm excited about it too. I mean, I got to say, when I've been bashing Odell Beckham, as you know, like when Jimbo's like, oh, I'm going to take him first and stuff like that. I mean, when I've bashed him the last 3 years or so, and just to be clear, if Jimbo's listening, I'm not suggesting first overall, but I know that you've been a huge OBJ homer. But the reason I've bashed him has always been because of Eli Manning. I've always been very consistent. Yep. I'm not going all in on a guy that's being thrown to by someone that shouldn't be an NFL quarterback. And that's changed now. So we'll see what happens. I mean, you know, I'm not like an anti-wide receiver diva guy. I mean, I think, you know, there's a place for these guys. They can thrive in certain environments, and maybe he's going to one right now. I mean, Baker Mayfield's a diva, so we'll see what happens.
I mean, you just mentioned the name that we need to talk about next. Talking about real quarterbacks is Baker Mayfield, who him and Odell, even before this trade happened, started to have a budding friendship, playing each other in video games, all that. And again, it sounds stupid to bring up things like that. You know, he's best friends with Landry, and he has a friendship with Baker. But when you're talking about such a combustible guy that can just blow up on the sidelines and freak out, like, it is important to have those social connections for a guy like Eli Manning. For a guy like Odell Beckham, you get rid of an Eli Manning, and you get Baker Mayfield in there, and obviously his stock goes flying through the roof with this. We already were so much higher on him. We've talked about it on this podcast at length. He was our QB6 as compared to a QB 12 to 13 ranking. And this, of course, will get the sheep to start catching up. You got a guy like Odell Beckham coming in. It's going to send Baker's ADP through the roof. But just how high are they going to put him? And I mean, we were so all in on Pat Mahomes last year, yet our ranking, you know, we had him 10 spots higher at like QB 9 versus like 18 for the experts, but that still just didn't reflect how much we praise this guy. And I feel like I'm not going to make that same mistake with Baker, because I truly see this guy throwing for 5,000 yards and maybe 30 to 40 touchdowns. So he's all the way up to my QB 3 right now with this move. From number 6, the only guys I take over him, of course, Patrick God Mahomes and Andrew Luck, and that's kind of questionable. I'm not positive I would take Andrew Luck over him. I think I would, but maybe I even move Baker all the way up to 2. And Deshaun Watson in that tier and conversation as well, just because he's got so much upside and really picked it up at the end of last year. But for me, Baker could go as high as 2, and right now is my number 3 quarterback. We already loved him because Freddie Kitchens, the continuity of him staying there was huge. When he took over, Baker just blew up and had a 4,500 38 TD pace. And then you add in Todd Monken, who we've already raved about, brings those air raid concepts, talks about how he likes having fun, how can we be explosive. That's what the game's all about, big plays. I like big plays. And now you get the ultimate big play threat to go with the ultimate big play arm in Baker Mayfield. The mix is too perfect. The marriage is too beautiful for me not to love everything about Baker Mayfield. Just like we talked about with Mahomes, everything just stacked up so perfectly that the stock score went through the roof. There's nothing I don't like about Baker Mayfield's stock profile, so why not ranking all the way up at number 2? That's where he's going for me. I absolutely love him, and he's going to be the guy I go all in on. I don't like to take quarterbacks early. I feel like he's going to be like a 6th to 7th rounder that I end up sinking my teeth into, though.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I don't think your quarterback rankings are crazy at all. I'd obviously put Mahomes ahead of him, and then after that, it's like question mark. It's like, you know, there's
right?
two or three guys that might be better, but I mean, I don't know. I might take him second. I'll be honest.
Yeah.
I mean, like, you could see Luck doing better, but it's like one of these things for me in fantasy is, I mean, I like Baker's weapons cabinet a little better, and I'd rather pull for Baker. I'd rather watch Baker.
You want to exactly.
Like, you know, if I'm like gun to my head, got to pick a quarterback after Mahomes, like, I would definitely pick Baker before Luck.
Absolutely.
Can we move on to Antonio Brown? I mean, we did a lot of content there on OBJ. That's a lot, but I mean,
it's a
I'm
ton.
sure there's more.
Well, you got to look at the team he leaves behind, and also just a quick mention the running game.
Do we? Is there anybody other than Saquon Barkley even worth talking about, even for a second?
And we got to talk about Barkley too, though. But before we get to them, just Browns wise, the running game, obviously it helps out Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt. That's still a wait and see because we don't know how many games Hunt's going to get. I mean, let's assume Hunt wasn't there. I would have Chubb at like my number 6 running back right now. I mean, number 6 overall. He would be blowing up. He through the roof because this lid lifter in Odell Beckham would just be that much more beneficial. So those games that Chubb gets as the clear-cut workhorse, whether it's 6 games, whether it's 10 games, he's going to feast and dominate, and maybe that's going to be enough to make it so Kareem Hunt is just a complimentary piece. So Chubb definitely takes a nice little hit up the rankings as well. And if this suspension ends up being longer than we expect, you could put Chubb close to the first round again where he already was ranking. This would have been a move that would have sent him to my top 5, so we still got to wait and see how long that suspension is, but this will undoubtedly help the running game. Looking at the Giants' impact, Saquon Barkley was my locked-in.
Don't take too long on this.
I know. We could do a whole
Giants
podcast on Odell. The Giants are garbage, and who really gives a shit? But I do want to note, Saquon Barkley was my locked-in number 1 overall pick, but the surrounding talent, it takes a huge hit. It already wasn't high for him at like 12 because you had Odell stretching the field, but now that he's gone, there's no weapon that's going to take any attention away from Barkley. And yes, he'll get more volume because he's that much more of the focal point, but the efficiency is going to take a severe hit when the defense is just keying on him the entire time. In fact, his fantasy points per game last year dropped pretty significantly when Odell was out, dropped by 5 points overall. He had 22 half PPR points, and that went down to like low 18, 17-ish when Odell was out of the lineup. He didn't have that attention getting taken away. His receiving stats surprisingly took a hit when Odell Beckham was there. And then you think back, it makes sense because the middle of the field was so wide open when you had Odell, and then they could just key in on Saquon and put their linebacker safeties, everyone in the box, and make it more congested. There was nobody there separating those guys, so his receiving stats took a hit. And now Saquon drops down to maybe 4 or so on my big board. Below, man, it's tough. Zeke's clearly ahead of him for me. Maybe even McCaffrey and Kamara. And then now it becomes like Barkley, and maybe Gurley, who has his own question marks now. I don't know. How far would you drop Barkley in your rankings personally?
Well, I didn't have Barkley number 1 overall, but I did have him very high.
Who was yours, Zeke?
No, I'm. First of all, I don't have anything in stone, but man, I'm leaning towards McCaffrey right now.
Yeah, he's so sexy, dude. I don't hate it.
He's sexy. He's sexy, and I mean, similar to I'm not going all in on Barkley because I just think the Giants are just garbage, and I get it. He's great, and he would rip a big play every game, no matter what. But I just even with Odell Beckham on his team, I was just like, how could you possibly go all in on a guy that's? I mean, it reminds me of like when they went all in on David Johnson like 2 years ago.
I was just gonna say
whatever, and it's like
last year, yeah.
I think Barkley's a better talent.
It's a great comparison.
I just like, I don't know. I wouldn't feel comfortable using the number 1 overall pick. I'd want to take somebody where I was pretty damn sure I was going to get something just like guaranteed. So I don't know. McCaffrey's the guy that I'm definitely keeping my eye on. Zeke, it's hard not to love Zeke. Kamara, we'll see. I mean, I have a little bit of I'm a little gun shy with Kamara, but I mean, I could see going that route too. But
now with Engram gone, that.
Yeah, now with Engram
Latavius Murray's there, yeah, but like I think that's a pretty steep downgrade going from.
I mean, I put Barkley, 5, lower end of top 5, I guess for me right now.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's move on. We're going to talk more about Barkley in the future. We're going to talk more about all these guys.
Yeah, Evan Ingram's the last guy, too. Yeah, Evan Ingram just the one last giant because Sterling Shepard's stats are kind of the same when Odell's been out of the lineup. Obviously, he'll see a little more volume. The efficiency drops. But Evan Ingram's been a monster whenever he's out. He scores at a much higher rate when Beckham's out of the lineup. He averages 4 more fantasy points per game when he's out of the lineup, and it's such a thin position at tight end. I mean, he crushed it last year over those last 4 weeks. I think he was the tight end 2 in fantasy when Beckham was out to end the season. So Evan Ingram gets a nice stock up as well. Other than that, the rest of the Giants take a pretty serious hit.